As I was looking at today's feast of All Souls Day, it's one of those days. So All Souls Day is the third of All Hallows Tide. So if you didn't know this, Halloween is actually a Catholic or Christian. It has deep Catholic and Christian roots. People have tried to say it's a pagan holiday. It's not. It's something that's it's very rooted in Catholicism. It's very rooted in the tradition of the church. It comes from All Hallows Eve. Hallows meaning like the holy ones, the saints, right? So it's All Saints Eve is what it is. Yesterday we celebrated All Saints Day. So All Saints Eve, we mock death. That was the whole idea of dressing up, right? All Saints Day, we celebrate all those who have gone into heaven, right? Are already in heaven, already experiencing their heavenly reward for all eternity, right? Not only the named saints, the ones that we know, the Saint Peter, John, James, Thomas, James, all those, right? But not only those, but also those who are in heaven that we don't know. Right? There are more than just the canonized saints that are in heaven. So that was yesterday. And today, who we celebrate is we celebrate all those who are on their way to heaven, right? All those who have passed, that are in purgatory, but that are on their way to heaven. So that's what All Souls Day is about, right? It's an interesting celebration. It's an interesting feast because it's basically, we have the whole church celebrates a funeral together. That's kind of the spirit of today, right? That's why you see priests wearing black or purple or white. Like we wear the colors from funerals. We do the readings are all readings that are options from funerals, right? It's just usually it's a day that's very interesting, and it's kind of to be completely honest, it's kind of like a weird feeling, right? Because what we're reflecting on is we are reflecting on death. And it's not something that's comfortable. It's not something that's fun. It's not something that, especially on back to standard time, early darkness kind of day, like it just kind of feels like dreary and dark, and it's like it's not the perfect. It's almost like the perfect day, but not the perfect day to be able to be reflecting on this, right? Every time I do a funeral, I say there's a few like standard things that I make sure to hit on, and one of them is when we celebrate a funeral, we want to do a few things well. We want to remember the person well, whether that's mourning the person or enjoying the person, right? Like we want to remember the person well. We want to pray well, right? Like we want to enter into the sacrifice of the celebration of the Mass. We want to like do a really good job of praying well, going to the Lord, right? And then there's also an invitation most of the time to reflect on death and on our own life, right? And we want to do that well. A few years ago, it was not this past January, the January before, so a little bit under 2 years ago, the bishop of the diocese, Bishop Mario Dorsenville, unexpectedly passed away. Now, he had been sick for a couple of months, but it was kind of hush-hush. Nobody really knew about it. We didn't know exactly to the extent how sick he was. And then all of a sudden, word gets out that he passed away. It was on a random night. Like I remember, like it just was it really shocked a lot of us, especially the priests, the diocesan staff, like all of us that were working. And I remember, like everybody just kind of like all of a sudden together caught our breath. The next few days was like planning a funeral, and it was just there was a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, a lot of craziness that was happening very quickly. But our now Bishop Simon Peter gets named. He becomes the administrator for the diocese, and just it was a crazy few weeks, right? I remember one of the first things, like after everything kind of calmed down, one of the first things that they did at the diocese office was they went and they did an audit of all of our priest files to make sure they had two things on record for every priest. They wanted to make sure that they had a last will and testament on the record for every priest, and they wanted to make sure they had all of our funeral arrangements on file. Traditionally, what would happen is that whenever a priest gets ordained in most dioceses, what happens is that you get two envelopes handed to you. The first envelope is, this is where your new assignment's going to be. Good luck, have fun, right? You're a new priest, and then they're going to stick you in the middle of nowhere, and good luck and like grow up, right? You're a baby priest right now. You think you're going to change the world? Just go like into the middle of nowhere, and that's where you're going to get stuck for a couple of years, right? And you'll learn from this old wise priest who's going to teach everything. It's basically Star Wars and Yoda, but we're not going to talk about it. Anyway, right? But like, so you have that, right? The second envelope that we get, though, typically was a form that basically said, we want your copy of your last will and testament, and we want your funeral arrangements. Now, I've been ordained for 8 years, and it's supposed to be within your first couple of months. They want funeral arrangements because if you die, they want to know what you're going to do. They want to know what to do. So I remember whenever this happened, like when all this was going on and they send this letter, I get the packet and I'm like, okay, I need to figure out funeral arrangements. So I'm like, okay, and they're like, okay, where do you want to be buried? I don't know, right? What kind of coffin do you want? I don't know. I knew all this stuff, but I never wrote it down, right? Like where do you want it? Like I'm like in the ground, right? Like who do you want as your pallbearers? And I'm like, they list names of people for your pallbearers, and I'm like, strong people, just don't drop me, please. Like I'm a big guy, right? Like what music do you want? I'm like, something quick, like let's get out of here, right? Like what's any special instructions? I wanted to like put something funny of like put me on wires, light goes down, all of a sudden strobe light hits and dance music starts, right? Like something crazy. Like I was gonna like, but like all this kind of stuff was like that would be really weird, but anyway. But like all this kind of stuff, it was all stuff that I'd never thought about. So like it was a lot more detail than I was expecting. Like where's your burial plot? And what do you want for a wake service? And who's going to give the homily at your thing? And I'm like, I know what priests aren't. Like is there going to be a eulogy? Is there going to be like, and I'm going through all this stuff. And I just remember after I was reading through it and looking at it, I took a step back and I kind of put it, I was sitting at my table and I put it on and I just kind of sat back for a second. I was like, God, this is weird. Because honestly, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to think about, hey, we're going to die at some point. Great thoughts, Father, but I'm in a mood. I watched the Saints early, right? Like, but like, there's an honest reflection there of at some point, life ends. And that might seem sad, it might seem hard, but the church today really gives us the chance to reflect on it, and I think to do those things well, right? Like we want to remember those who have gone before well. Like that's part of today's feast. Like that's part of today's celebration. Our loved ones who have passed away, whether that be recently, whether they be in the past, right? People that we know that we love that have gone before us, right? Grandparents, parents, friends. Like we want to remember and pray for them well today. We do. It's a major part of today's feast. Like we want to pray, right? We want to be in relationship with God. But there's also a part of today that's about us and being able to reflect on how am I living my life and how am I ultimately approaching death. Our second reading, I think the second reading was the only reading that was different in the Missalette. But our second reading today is one of my favorites for funerals. It's the second reading for my funeral. You're welcome. But anyway, but this is what St. Paul writes. And it's one of my favorites because St. Paul hits the nail on the head for us. We do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, about those who have fallen asleep. Now, when Paul is writing this, remember, he's writing this is from the first letter to the Thessalonians. He's writing it to a small community of Christians that's in Thessalonica, right? It's in a Greek city, Thessalonica, right? So he's writing a letter to a smaller community of Christians that are surrounded by pagans. They're surrounded by people that don't have the worldview, don't have the mindset, don't have the understanding of what it means to die. We do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, about those who have fallen asleep, about those who have died, so that you may not grieve like the rest. Who's the rest? The non-Christians. You see, in the world that Paul was writing to, and I find in the world that we live in today, when faced with death, death is a darkness. Death is an end. Death is a period. And they died. And it's over. Like the whole story is at death, there's nothing else. And when we think about that, like when we see depictions of that in the world, when we come across people that maybe are not friends of, maybe friends that we have that are not people of faith, or people don't have that true belief in what it is that we celebrate as Christians, right? Like when faced with death, death is a moment of despair. There's nothing else. If this world is all that we have, think about it. It's an empty world. That can be an empty life. If all that I have is more pleasure, more fame, right? More power, more pleasure. Like if only if the riches of this world are all that I am called to live for, that's an empty existence. In our world, when it's just about this world, death ends it all. But St. Paul says, we do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, about those who have fallen asleep, so that you may not grieve like the rest, comma, who have no hope. See, that's the distinguishing factor between us as Christians and the rest of the world. Because when the rest of the world is faced with death, when the rest of the world is faced with the end, right? When the rest of the world is faced with with that moment of everything's over, it is dark. There is a period. There's nothing. But we don't have that worldview. We don't have that perspective on existence, on reality. We as Christians believe that death is not a period, it is a comma. That death is not an end, it is a doorway. That beyond this world, there is something, some place that is greater than anything we can experience on this world. That the goods of this world are but a shadow of the things that are waiting for us in heaven. So how do we live? We live differently. We live with hope. Like, the interesting thing is that us as Christians, we're a little bit nuts, if you really think about it. Some more than others, right? But we're a little bit out there. If we do not believe that there is something beyond this world, if we do not believe that heaven exists, if we do not believe that there is a good that is beyond this world, that is greater than any good that we can experience in this world, if you or I, any of us believe that death is a period, death is a darkness that cannot be overcome, then quite honestly, we are wasting our time here tonight. Because everything of the Christian faith is built on Christ enters into the world so that he can bring us up with him in heaven. Everything of our faith points to the reality of heaven, the reality of the resurrection, the reality of paradise beyond this world. This is temporary, and that we have something greater to hope for. Every Mass we celebrate, after we do the gifts and we do everything, there's a prayer called the preface. It's right before the Eucharistic prayer, and the one we'll pray today. The preface, oftentimes, especially around feast, have some really interesting lines and images for us to kind of reflect on that draw us into the mystery of the celebration that we're celebrating. And today, this is the one we'll read. It says. In him the hope of blessed resurrection has dawned, and those saddened by the certainty of dying might be consoled by the promise of immortality to come. Right? That it's in Jesus that the hope of resurrection has dawned, that those saddened by the certainty of dying, us, right, might be consoled by the promise of immortality to come. Right? That, yes, when we look at the reality of death, when we look at the reality of our mortality giving way, right? That there is a sadness there, for sure, right? But it's because of Jesus Christ, it's because of his passion, because of the incarnation, because of his passion, because of his death, because of his resurrection, right? That he has overcome death. Indeed, for your faithful Lord, life is changed, not ended. The life that we have in this world goes beyond. The life, the good of ourself, right? The soul that we have exists beyond this world and will always exist beyond this world, right? We'll go on to another place, right? And what we do is today when we celebrate, when we're reflecting on the fact of our death, the fact of this doorway that we have to pass through, right? It gives us a place of it can give us a place of pause because we get worried about where we're going to end up. I don't know about you, but that's one of the first things that hits me when I reflect on my death. It just sounds weird. Where is it that I'll one day end up? Years ago, I had this image, and I realized I was approaching my relationship with God in this way. It might be stupid. It probably is. I apologize, but I'm just going to share it because I also think the couple of people I've shared it with in the past, they've like, ooh, that hits. Like that's similar, right? I feel that way. I always kind of look at my relationship with God. At one point, I was looking at my relationship with God as basically like a golf leaderboard. Now, bear with me. In a golf tournament, you have to end up at a certain spot to make the cut. Right? If you have too many strokes, you don't make the cut, right? So like in a golf tournament, a weekend golf tournament for the PGA or whatever, like you have to make the cut. So what happens is that like if you have too many strokes over the course of your first 2 days, what happens? You're cut. You don't finish the round. You don't finish the tournament. Well, I always had this image of if every time I sin, it's another stroke. Every time I sin, it's another tally. I said a lie, tally. Broke the speeding, tally, right? Like, I said something bad about my sister? No, right? A bunch of things, right? But all these kind of things. Like every time we mess up, every time we sin, there's this image and this understanding that it's another mark, it's another mark, it's another mark. And then basically saying that there is a line, like some arbitrary line that God has, that if I stay below that line, I'm good. I have not enough strokes under that. Like if I'm under that line, if I'm under that total, that maximum, then I'm okay. But the second that I go over it and I die, boop, I'm already going to hell. And if it's serious sins, sometimes serious sins, what they do is they're like multiple strokes at a time, right? And if I do a mortal sin, then I'm at like infinite and I can't get in because I'm over the max. So I have to panic and get to confession as soon as possible. And if I don't get to confession and I die on the way, then I am screwed. And I don't know if I'm alone with that, but I have a feeling I'm not. Because there can be this idea of looking at death and being afraid. Because I'm going to face a God that's vengeful. I'm going to face a God that's arbitrary. I'm going to face a God that is cold. And will be ready to say, nope, you're not welcomed. That is not the relationship we have with God. That is not the relationship that God has established with us. This is even like imprinted in the rites and the celebrations that we celebrate in the Catholic Church. Because the beautiful thing is like most of the stuff that we do at the beginning of a funeral point directly to baptism. Like for example, at the beginning of a funeral, when I celebrate a funeral, when it starts, somebody will a lot of times get up and give a testimony on behalf of the person, right? We call that the eulogy, and that's when you hear about Uncle Bud being kind of crazy or Aunt Marguerite being a piece of work, right? Whatever it is, but that's where you hear like some inside jokes in the family, and people kind of smile, and then like there's usually some sad moments, and then like there's some tearing up and crying, and because like it's an emotional thing, right? Like, and there's a sad thing that we're saying goodbye to this person, but we're remembering them well. Well, at the beginning of a baptism, it was funny. Today, after 10:30 Mass, I did a baptism, and what was it? Oh, who stands up? It's mom and dad and godparents. They stand up and they testify on behalf of this student, on behalf of this child, that we're going to raise them in the practice of the faith. That we're going to take on that responsibility now, until they can for themselves. As the funeral goes on and we start the celebration, what happens? There's the coffin that's usually right in the front, right? And the first thing that we do is we take holy water and we sprinkle the coffin. And as we sprinkle the coffin, we make a point to remind everybody that it's through the waters of baptism that so-and-so died with Christ and rises with them to new life, right? That this moment of death, this moment of sadness, this moment of grief, where we are escorting this soul into heaven, we point back to the most important moment of this person's life. It is not the birth of their first child. It is not the day that they were born. It's not the day that they got married or graduated from college. The most important day of every one of our lives was the day that we were baptized. Because by the virtue of the day that we were baptized, that moment, our entire reality changed, that our relationship with God changed, that we no longer knew him as an idea or as a concept, but he knows us as a father knows a child. That he's not solely a judge anymore. but that he knows us as a father loves a child. That we are adopted at that moment. At the funeral, we clothe the coffin with a pall, and we have the Easter candle lit. Right after the child's baptized, we clothe them with a white garment, which points to the pall at the funeral. And we light a candle and give it to him. Give it to the Godfather. The images of these two things, they point to each other. Because what happens at the day of the funeral is that we see that the promissory note of baptism, right, is being called upon. It's being redeemed. That the life that God says at our baptism that we receive, that we know that we are being promised of a place in heaven, right? That at our funeral, we call upon and we say, God, now pay up. Let me in. When we live our life in fear of death, I think most of the time it's because we live our life apart from the Lord. Death is not something to be feared, to be scared of. But when we live in a relationship with God, when we trust him and he trusts us, when we lean into his relationship with him, when we live our life according to him, death is something to be reverenced, yes. But it is simply a doorway into another way of reality, another existence, another way of relating to God for all eternity. When we come to Mass, we have the chance to check ourselves. How am I doing? Am I living in relationship with God as my Father? Am I living from that relationship? Or am I doing my best to not sin out of fear? Because I just don't want to go to hell. Tonight as we come to Mass, as we celebrate this feast, we want to remember those who have passed, yes. We want to pray for them and ourselves, yes. But also invite you to take stock of where are you in your relationship with God right now. How have you been living in relationship with him? Is death, is the end of our life, is our mortality something that's uncomfortable or that I'm afraid of? And why? Tonight as we come to Mass, we have the chance to renew our commitment to him, to our Father. To renew our commitment to a God that loves us. To renew our commitment to living a life that is morally in line with what the Lord wants for us. And today as we come to Mass, we not see death as something to be feared, but something to be reverenced. May we come to the Father, first and foremost, as a child that loves him and that is loved by him, before ever coming to him as a judge, just begging to get in. Our faith is a faith of redemption. Our faith is a faith of hope. May we not be afraid and despair like the pagans, but may we approach the Lord with hope of the world to come.